On this episode of Perception in the Law, Professor Addicott takes on the UN and the international community and the role they play in the war on terrorism, and answers the question, are they hurting or helping the American efforts? So sit back and let's get started.
Hi, my name is Professor Jeff Addicott, and today we're going to discuss the topic of the United Nations and international law as it applies to the war against Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and associated forces. You've often heard that we are violating international law. The United States is violating international law. And I'm very curious when I hear that, because then I ask the question, what exactly are you pointing to? What international case are you talking about that we have violated? What mandate or ruling from the Security Council can you point to that says that we're violating international law? And what they generally mean is that, in my opinion, we're violating international law, which is fine, and people can like things or not like things, but the question is, what does the law say? If you look at the United Nations, for example, it's a body, it's an organization that many people provide great attention to. I don't happen to be one of them. Because if you logically look at the United Nations, about a quarter of the members are ruthless dictators. They do not believe in the articles established by the Charter of the United Nations. They do not allow many of the principles that freedom-loving people apply. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of press, they don't exist. And yet they're full-fledged members of the United Nations, and therefore we're supposed to stand in awe when the United Nations makes a pronouncement about one thing or the other. Now, the real ruling force in the United Nations is the United Nations Security Council. It consists of 5 permanent members. All 5 permanent members must agree when a Security Council resolution is issued. If one of them doesn't agree, for example, for use of force, then it doesn't have any effect. Has the Security Council condemned the United States for anything that it has done in the last 12 years? The answer? No. We've had 2 major Security Council resolutions that have been issued in the war on terror. One recognizes the United States and its legitimacy to occupy Iraq when we defeated Saddam Hussein's army, and it was unanimous. The other one recognized the legitimacy of the Iraqi interim government. That was also unanimous. After that, there's really nothing there. What about international tribunals? No, there's really no ruling from international tribunals per se about our conduct in the war on terror. The war against Al-Qaeda, or if you want to extend that to the war against Iraq. Simply not there. NATO. NATO, following the attacks of 9/11, they triggered Article 5 of the NATO Charter, which has never been done before in the history of NATO. NATO is a North Atlantic Treaty Organization which was established to confront the Soviet Union and its bloc during the Cold War. So the NATO Charter says that if one member of NATO is attacked, then all the other members of NATO will come to their aid. When the United States was attacked by Al-Qaeda on 9/11, NATO authorized Article 5. And they said, yes, we recognize the inherent right of the United States to defend itself, and we're coming to your aid. Now this is kind of curious because the United States was not attacked by another nation state. They were attacked by a non-state actor. But nevertheless, NATO said, well, the law doesn't exactly fit, but we're going to use it anyway. Same thing happened with the Security Council. They did issue a resolution immediately following 9/11, recognizing that the United States had the inherent right of self-defense under Article 51. That means that they also recognized that the attack was tantamount to the attack by a nation state. Now this is confusing for many people because the law of war was basically written when one nation goes to war against another nation in the modern era. The problem, of course, Al-Qaeda is not a nation state. But the international community and the United States, we've used the law of war because that's the best fit. We're not at war with a criminal organization. The law of war fits better than domestic criminal law. So the United Nations has been guilty, if you will, of applying the law of war against a non-state actor, and the United States has done the same thing. We obviously need a new set of international laws to deal with the phenomenon of a non-state actor that's large, like Al-Qaeda, that's organized and that's waging war. Will that happen? I'm not hopeful, because the United Nations can't even agree on defining terrorism, as we discussed before. if you can't agree on a definition of terrorism, how in the world can you ever come up with a new set of laws that are a hybrid, basically, between domestic criminal law, between the law of war, to deal with this new phenomenon? Now, many nations around the world, they do not use the law of war to confront Al-Qaeda and radical Islam extremists. What they have done is they've amended their domestic criminal law, the British and the French, for example. If they label you as a terrorist, then they can confine you for weeks before they charge you with a crime. Previous, they couldn't do that. So they've amended their domestic criminal law to deal with the new phenomenon. We have not amended our domestic criminal law. If you're a non-Al-Qaeda member, but you're motivated by radical Islam, you get the full benefit of the federal courts, the federal rules of evidence, or if you're tried by our military system as Hassan, Major Hassan is being tried in Texas, the full benefit of a military courts martial that any other military soldier would get. So we haven't amended our domestic criminal law. Other nations have, but we have used the law of war. Why do we use the law of war? Because of 9/11. Before 9/11, we used domestic criminal law to deal with Al-Qaeda. After 9/11, we've used the law of war. To stay up to date on the latest news, be sure to like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter.